I've ginned up 10 cards to add into the Veloci-Ramp-Tor precon, totaling $10 in this hyper budget upgrade that will make the dino smashing smashier. The commander for this build will be Pantlaza, Sun Favored, that once per turn discovers when she or any other dinosaur enters the battlefield. Mechanically, Discover is basically Cascade, only you have the choice to either cast the spell for free or put it in your hand. The secondary commander, Weda, Trainer Prodigy, lets you fight when she taps, but also has this wicked ability that doubles the triggered ability of a permanent you control if a creature you control was dealt damage. I'll explain more clearly while showing off another new creature. Wrathful Raptor's triggered ability happens when a dinosaur you control is dealt damage. When it takes that damage, it deals that much damage to any other target that isn't a dinosaur. Someone rightfully wants the Raptors straight off the battlefield and casts Nahiri's Warcrafting to get it done. You can choose to direct 5 damage to another creature, planeswalker, player, so long as it isn't a dinosaur. If Weda is on the battlefield, you can apply 5 damage twice. Here's an upgrade idea that may have just crossed your mind that won't be in the 10 cards found later on in the video. Blasphemous Act. 4 or 5 dinosaurs on the battlefield with the Wrathful Raptors, combined with the 13 damage to each of them, could burn all your opponent's life totals to 0 in a single blaze of glory. Real quick, hit that subscribe button to do your part in solving the Israel-Palestine conflict. Ixalan's Lorekeeper is a 1-mana creature that can tap for any color mana, so long as it's used on a dinosaur spell or dinosaur ability. This is straight up not helpful in just about every other deck in the world, but has a wonderful home here in a dinosaur tribal deck. Dinosaur Egg is a good looking Easter egg, and the flavor of this card makes it worth keeping around. It gets bigger as creatures enter the battlefield, and when it dies, it hatches by discovering a new dinosaur. Itzquinth, firstborn of Gishath, is most importantly completely adorable. It's a hasted 2/3, which is nothing special, but the upside is the additional 2 cost of ETB that gives you access to a removal ability, or enables some of the dinosaurs getting damaged payoffs. Sunfrill Imitator needs help to do anything, but if there's another scary dino on the battlefield when it attacks, like Rampaging Brontodon, this 3-mana 3/3 is suddenly a massive problem. Bronzebeak Foragers is a creature that I expect to find its way into the higher powered dinosaur decks. On ETB, it exiles a non-land permanent from each player until it leaves the battlefield. The real juice is that you can spend mana to put these spells into their owner's graveyard. I love it as an early play to get rid of key early game pieces like Soul Rings and Mana Dorks, and as a later game play to clear the path for your dino army. Curious Altosaur is a solid enough defensive piece with Vigilance, Reach, and 5 Toughness. Letting you draw cards whenever a dinosaur deals combat damage to a player is the reason it's invited to my birthday party. Scion of Calamity is a menace to society. It has Myriad, so it attacks everyone, forcing each player to either block a 5-powered creature or take 5 damage and have one of their artifacts or enchantments destroyed. Earthshaker Dreadmaw is the last new creature and is a lovely homage to the colossal Dreadmaw. And while that is the most powerful card ever printed in Magic the Gathering, the Earthshaker is putting in work as well, letting you draw cards equal to the amount of other dinosaurs you control when it enters the battlefield. Progenitor's Icon is a 3-mana mana rock, which is okay, but the second ability will let you cast a creature with Flash. This is a cool angle this deck can move into with Pantlaza at the helm. Since the Discover trigger only happens once per turn, play a creature during your turn and then use this artifact to flash in a creature on someone else's turn for double the Discover value. And while we're on the topic of cool angles for the deck, loading up with blinking effects like Eldrazi Displacer and Ephemerate can make sure you are getting maximum discover triggers. From the Rubble is the final new card in the precon. I love this enchantment because you can play this spell and then on the same turn reap the rewards of recurring a creature of your chosen type from the graveyard to the battlefield. Get the Dreadmaw back to draw some cards. If Pantlaza is on the battlefield, discover 6 to find something like the Ripjaw Raptor, and all of a sudden, you're set up really nicely. It needs to be said, the creatures you return to the battlefield will have a finality counter on it, meaning that if the creature would die, it would be exiled. Before we get to the upgrade portion, I want to highlight the highest valued 6 cards that you will find reprinted in the precon. Akroma's Will is the first one, valued right now at just over $17. Giving all your dinosaurs Flying, Vigilance, and Double Strike is nuts. Giving them all lifelink, indestructible, and protection from all colors is nuts. Giving them both is next to unstoppable. Chandra's Ignition is a huge explosion affecting every creature besides the targeted creature and all opponents, dealing damage equal to the targeted creature's power. This spell in a dinosaur deck is for sure 6 or 8 damage. But this spell truly shines when paired with a creature like Blightsteel Colossus that will win the game through poison counters when the spell resolves. Apex Altasaur is a massive boy that comes into play and starts thrashing wildly. Think the pool scene in Showgirls. The Altasaur fights a creature on ETB, and then if it was dealt damage, fights again, and again until there are no more creatures or no more Altasaur. Xenagos, God of Rebels, is an indestructible enchantment creature that every combat gives one of your creatures haste and +X/+X, where X is that creature's power. In a deck list that has plenty of ability to trample, having that haste bonus and power boost is going to start wrecking life totals really quickly. Descendant's Path is one of the best green enchantments in a tribal deck, because if you hit a creature on your upkeep when the spell triggers, it amounts to a freely casted creature. The downside is that if you don't hit, you don't get any value. The solution is very simple. Just reveal creatures. Yes, my brain is huge. Temple Altasaur is the Apex Altasaur's way more chill relative. Instead of fighting anything and everything, this creature prevents all damage except 1 to dinosaurs you control. If this is on the battlefield when Apex Altasaur ETBs, that's when the real pain train is coming. Other noteworthy reprints are Runic Armasaur, Kinjali Sunwing, and Rhythm of the Wild. It's officially time to get into the 10 card upgrade for $10. The first creature takes up over half the budget because it's just so darn good in this deck. Silverclad Ferocidons. That 7 mana value is quite hefty, but it's well worth it because that enrage trigger makes each opponent sacrifice a permanent. If Weda is on the battlefield, that would be 2 permanents. There is the very boring way of attacking with a creature or blocking to get that trigger, but it's way better when you can force the issue. Forerunner of the Empire will do just that. The first effect alone, tutoring a dinosaur, is fantastic, but the second bit makes this a must-add. Whenever a dinosaur enters the battlefield under your control, you may have Forerunner of the Empire deal 1 damage to each creature. That is going to trigger the Ferocidons I just talked about, making each opponent sacrifice a permanent. If Pantlaza is on the battlefield and discovers another dinosaur, you get another trigger, they sack another permanent. Now remember, the Ferocidons aren't the only enraged creatures in the deck, and not the only enraged creatures I'm adding. Next is Siegehorn Ceratops. In true Celestia fashion, this creature gets +1/+1 counters when dealt damage. 2, to be exact. And with only 2 toughness to start, you need to be careful to not destroy the creature before reaping the reward. The Forerunner of the Empire treads that line. Snapping Sailback also utilizes counters, but this creature has Flash to ambush an unsuspecting opponent that attacks you. Is the single counter payoff exactly what I want? No, but having Flash can make sure you get a beneficial block off. And more importantly, gives you another turn where Pantlaza can go discover another spell. You've got to make sure you have the resources to cast a dinosaur during your turn and flash the sailback in. And that's where Knight of the Stampede makes an entrance. It costs 4 mana, has an unimpressive stat line, but reduces the mana cost of dinosaurs by 2. The dinosaur creature type generally skews high in mana cost, so having this cost reduction will often be the difference between casting a single spell versus multiple spells in a rotation. The last creature addition is the Tranquil Frillback. It's got the whole package, including artifact and enchantment hate, graveyard hate, and life gain. The best part is that you don't have to choose. You can spend up to 3 more green mana and use all 3 abilities when it ETBs. The only instant addition, making the grand total of instants in this deck a whopping 5, is Shake the Foundations. Besides the rampaging dinosaurs on the card art, which I admit did influence my decision, the drawn card is great, and the single ping is going to trigger all the enrage effects you've got on the battlefield. And if you're lucky, take out a few of your opponent's creatures. Or at least make their blocks a little more uncomfortable. The final 3 additions are enchantments meant to increase your card draw, because in my opinion, that was one of the less ideal parts of the precon. The first is Garruk's Uprising. Draw when you play it if you've got a big dino, draw when you play a big dino, and give trample to everything that doesn't already have it. It just feels good all over. Colossal Majesty is right on brand with a dino stomping in the art. On your upkeep, draw a card if you control a creature with power 4 or greater. Last but not least is Folk Hero, which again gives you drawn cards. This time if your commander is on the battlefield and you cast a creature that shares a type with it. This is especially good with Pantlaza because of the Discover mechanic. You can cast a Bellowing Aegisaur to draw a card, and if you hit another dinosaur through the Discover trigger, you get to draw another card. Because despite not having to pay the mana cost, Discover still has you cast the spell. If you've got money to spend on an upgrade, Polyraptor is exactly the kind of creature you want in the Veloci-Ramp-Tor precon. With the damage taken doubling from Weda and ways to trigger the raptor yourself with spells like Fiery Confluence, you'll be drowning in dinos in no time. It also combos for the win if resolved with Wrathful Raptors and Marauding Raptor on the battlefield. Trapjaw Giant has the same enrage mechanic, except this time it's removal. Swinging in with massive dinosaurs is cool. Ensuring your opponents have no blockers is better. Lastly, Urza's Incubator will let you select dinosaurs to then reduce the casting cost of them by 2 generic mana. When you've got Zacama and the Apex at your disposal, getting them out sooner is way better than getting them out later. There are the 10 cards for $10, and now we move to remove 10 cards, and I'm going to do this quickly. Thundering Spineback and Verdant Sun's Avatar are the first cuts. Dinosaurs have too much power for a 7 mana Lord effect, and while the incidental life gain is nice isn't what I'm after. The 2 sorceries, Thunderherd Migration and Savage Stomp, are the next to go. The bonus cost might be worth it if you could search for a forest, but it's not worth a basic land. Savage Stomp is fine and cheap removal when targeting dinosaurs, but if I have access to white, I'd rather not take the risk of some surprise Death Touch effect and just throw in a Swords to Plowshares and be done with it. Thrashing Brontodon is okay. Tranquil Frillback just does it better. Majestic Heliopterus does have upside, I'll grant you that. If it had haste, it would stay in, but it doesn't, so hit the road. Or the skies, I guess. Shifting Ceratops is next, and looks like a sweet sideboard in a 60 card head-to-head format against mono blue. But the single color protection isn't the most impressive in a 4-player format. Raging Regisaur I wanted to keep in because of that 1 damage ping on attack. But a 4-mana 4/4 without trample or haste or even reach just kinda makes me sad. Now if you wanted to keep the last 2 in, I get it, but I'm pretty bored of seeing them and I'm going to be the change I want to see in the world. Atali Primal Storm and Zetalpa Primal Dawn get the axe. Free spells are always cool, but not always the most helpful, while probably drawing more ire from the table than they might be worth. Zetalpa's 8 toughness is actually pretty sweet with Pantlaza's toughness matters discoverability, but despite the million keywords, can be dealt with pretty easily in the games we see in current year. Here are the 10 upgrade additions to the deck, focusing on more enrage triggers, making those triggers happen, and card draw. Please take a second to subscribe to the channel, like the video, comment about what card I should have included, and as always, tune in next week for more monkeying around.